And that shows his attitude towards life. How much Indian he was, how much he believed in the tradition. I read. I don't believe in the last paragraph of that book, page number 18. He says, I don't believe in personal immortality and have found no good reasons to believe in it. Impersonal immortality, meaning that just as my body will merge into the elements, so will my consciousness merge into a cosmic consciousness. Makes sense to me. Advaita. So, but I do not know if it is true. Philosopher comes here. A skeptic, my father and my mother, Professor Mahanti says, as far as I am concerned, are irretrievably and without residue gone. So will I. Full stop. What remains and will remain is memory transmitted through tradition, story, and history. Last line is very important. Ancestor worship makes sense. Professor Mahanti says, ancestor worship makes sense, more sense than worshipping an an imagined deity. So this is the Professor Mahanti's Shraddha for his parents and our Shraddha for him. One line, I would like to end my talk saying, Yasas Sarirena Mritaha Sajivati. Thank you, Sachidananda, and all others for this opportunity. Thank you, Professor Mukhopadhyay, Professor Chakravarti, and Professor Karachatani, and all others who have been here to be a part of this.
Thank you, Professor Godavarish Mishra. And now I would like to request Professor Ramesh Chandra Pradhan to speak a few words.
Thank you, Professor Mishra, for giving me this opportunity to speak on the occasion. I join all of you in paying our deep homage to late Professor Jain Mohanty. Professor Mohanty has been, for the philosophers of this country, a very familiar name. He was not only internationally known as a great philosopher, but also as a very humble and very nice human being. So I had the great opportunity of meeting once or twice on the sidelines of some seminars, but I was really deeply impressed not only by his great mind, but also his great soul. So as all of you have already paid your homage by bringing out the different facets of his life, which will inspire us for generations together. One point which has been mentioned about his deeply religious affiliation to the Jagannath tradition, as Professor Chakravarti mentioned, and also the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, as Professor Godavarish Mishra also mentioned. The fact is that he remained true to the soil of Orissa, though he lived in Bengal and also later on in USA. And in a sense, he was a world citizen, but he remained true to his native soil. There was one important occasion in Utkal University when he was invited along with his many of his colleagues from the US, and it was the occasion of celebrating his works and also felicitating him on his works by the Department of Philosophy of Utkal University and also to some extent the government of Orissa. There it was revealed how he was so attached to his native soil, his native culture, that shows the deeply human aspect of such a great personality. One aspect which I should mention is that he joined Vinova's Bhudan movement in the 50s. His whole family is a family of freedom fighters. Uh, I think some of the greatest names in Orissa associated with Gandhian movement are they belong to his family. So it is quite very important that he followed uh, uh, Saint Vinova on his Padayatra in Orissa. So I had the occasion to ask him, "Sir, why did you follow him? So you are a great philosopher, and he was on a different mission, a social mission." He said, "I joined Vinova's Padayatra movement to understand Upanishads from that great saint. By no means Vinova was a less philosopher, especially in the Advaita tradition, and he had deep knowledge of Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, as you all know. So Professor Mahanti followed him as much as an inspired young man, but also as a philosopher. He wanted to understand Upanishads from Vinoba's mouth. So that aspect of his life is really truly revealing. He was whatever philosophical achievement he has, which are recognized worldwide, and who has been an internationally recognized philosopher from Indian origin. But inside the philosopher's mind is the deeply spiritual and enlightened human being. I think that is the greatness of this great personality. I used to, when as a student in Ravenshaw College, we read his book, edited book on Hume's Inquiry, as Professor Chakravarti mentioned, with 30 pages of introduction. That was the first acquaintance as a student with this great man, that here is a man who is writing so authoritatively on Hume, and also giving us giving us the opportunity to read Hume's Inquiry. Reading Hume in the 70s in Orissa perhaps would have been anachronistic, because Orissa has really in those days was very much in the grip of the Western thinking. So instead of studying many things about Indian philosophy, we were asked to read Hume. So in that sense, it is Professor Mahanti's contribution that he brought Hume to the students who had hardly any idea of Western thinking, excepting as preliminaries at the BA stage. So that shows that he can make a great philosopher understandable to even a very young student of philosophy. So that greatness of writing he had. And when I follow his works, which are deeply, in a sense, they are very extraordinary. But the style of his writing is so important. He makes every great thinker very simple and intelligible to us. Thinkers like Hegel, Husserl, Kant, they're very difficult thinkers. But in the hands of Professor Mahanti, those philosophers also speak to us very intelligibly. Therefore, that we must really appreciate that this great man, in spite of his own original ideas on philosophical matters on which it has been already spoken so eloquently, that he remained true to his own way of expressing ideas and makes them understandable even to the common man. I think this is the occasion for us to remember him, but also, as Professor Chakravarti rightly pointed out, we must follow his thought. We must be inspired in thinking our own philosophies, which Professor Mahanti never left. Indian philosophies he had a great love for, and that is the agenda which he has before us, as Professor Chakravarti has rightly said. And this agenda is for the future generation. It is not the present generation that has to take it up, but the future generations also will be taking up this agenda, this philosophical approach, the philosophical ideas that he has left before us. So with these few words, I join once again in paying my deep homage to the great India and the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, I would like to request Professor Rakesh Chandra to share his thoughts on Professor J.N. Mohanty, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Mishra. As a very, very minor reader of the great author, I pay my homage to Professor J.N. Mohanty.
Rakesh, come to the center. Rakesh, come to the center. You are cut off.
Gratitude to Professor Satchidanand Mishra.
Make Rakesh come to the center here.
He's
not
stating something.
opposite way.
आवाज
आवाज नहीं. राकेश कट गया.
नहीं, आपकी आवाज, हमारी आवाज नहीं जा रही क्या? नहीं, वो आप सर कुछ बोल रहे हैं, अरिंदम चक्रवर्ती जी कुछ बोल रहे हैं।
राकेश का वीडियो कट गया। राकेश को सेंटर में दीजिए। आपका जगह में राकेश को रखिए।
इनकी सुनाई नहीं पड़ रहा।
Please keep Rakesh in your place.
सर क्या हुआ देखो, आवाज यहाँ पर दिखाई पड़ रहा, आवाज नहीं आ रही। Okay, he is stopped.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So I thank Professor Satchidanand Mishra for giving me an opportunity to also express my deep sense of gratitude and pay my homage to J.L. Mohanty. In our university, we have been teaching J.L. Mohanty in a very small way. And it's interesting that we introduce J.L. Mohanty as one of the persons whom we take to be of relevance, especially with regard to the controversy between defining Indian and Western philosophy and looking at comparative philosophy. We take three Indian philosophers in that. We take Rajendra Prasad for representing the idea that there is no Indian and Western philosophy, there is only philosophy. We take certain writings of Professor P.K. Mukhopadhyay to highlight the fact that there is a distinctive Indian philosophy, especially with reference to soteriology. And then we take J.L. Mohanty to represent the idea that the whole idea of distinguishing Indian and Western philosophy is not such a hot idea in any case. You could take a problem and take it to anywhere and find answers, as has been made famous by Dr. Arindam Chakravarti's paper, Plato's Indian Barbers. So, as the most wonderful representation of what Professor Mohanty was trying to say. So that's how we read a little bit of Mohanty. My own reading of Mohanty has largely been confined to a few writings of his, the writings on classical Indian tradition, that Australian Journal of Philosophy, Theory and Practice, and certain other things. What I just wanted, and this is why I think what we were sharing in a very private thing with Professor Satchidanand Mishra, is that the contribution of Professor Mohanty, I think, would be best recognized if in the coming year we took all the four areas in which he worked very hard. I had thought of third, but I think the fourth has now come. The first was his contribution to Indian philosophy. The second, his contribution to phenomenology. And the third, his contribution to writings on Kant. Fourth, I think, as has been brought forward, especially by all the people who read his book, as his contribution on Hume. And let me just express my sense of awkwardness regarding all the four, which I think should be treated. One, this whole thing that what Godavarish was mentioning, that, addressing the West. I think in many of his writings on Indian philosophy, Professor Mohanty is clearly addressing the West very self-consciously. And I think, why is he doing that? How is he doing that? Is he doing it correctly and or incorrectly is something which we need to examine. Number two, on the very forthright writings that he has on looking at the difference between Frege's and Husserl's Noema, and his rather audacious comments that, the idea of that Frege has no notion of a structured intentional mental act, and therefore what the idea of Zen remains an unstable poise, I think requires much examination. And I think we would be paying a great tribute to Professor Mohanty if we were to look at that. Similarly, I have found it very uncomfortable reading the notes of Professor Mohanty put together by Amita Di, Tara Di, and Chanda Di, and where I find that his understanding of subjectivity and subjecthood in Kant requires more investigation. And the idea, he takes a very, very strongly phenomenological reading where subjecthood or the transcendental subjecthood in the transcendental unity of a perception of Kant, the way we read through Strawson and Wilkerson and the other, is entirely differently understood by him. And we can perhaps debate whether he has it right or we have it right or both of us have it wrong. The other thing also, I think, which comes to my mind is on Taradi's remark on how she thinks that the Swaprakash nature of the self is best explained by our understanding of the self. And I was wondering that for a man who wrote on Hume, and which has been quoted twice, how would he respond to Hume's interrogation regarding the idea of self-knowledge as Swaprakash? So I really think that in the coming year, if some of these people who actually read and had interaction with Professor Mohanty, we had very little interaction. Twice I heard him, once in Delhi, once in Lucknow. My last meeting was a meeting which was not to be. I was asked by Krishnadi to go and meet him. I went and stayed, so waited for him for about 2.5 hours, but he could not come because I think he had some difficulty, so we could not meet. So I have had no personal interaction with Professor Mohanty apart from being a witness to him, to 2 of his lectures, and reading some of his works. But I do think that a man of his stature deserves the kind of attention that he does by all of us today. And it would be, I think, in the fitness of things that in the coming year, if we could really organize a big investigation into the themes that were dear to his heart, look at his understanding, and be forthright and fairly critical in also getting whether he got it right and whether we still needed to have more from him. With that, because that is the only way I think we pay our homage to the masters, is by taking them seriously, investigating them, critiquing them, not debunking them. And I think that all of the young students today, I think, would benefit greatly if they started with some of his simpler works, including the very simple work, which I think everybody should use, Classical Indian Traditions. So with that, I once again pay my homage to the great master. And I thank Sachidanandji for giving me an opportunity to also say something. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Rakesh Chandraji. And I think this is time to conclude this program. Professor Jain Mohanty is really a Punya Smarana. In Sanskrit we call Punya Smarana, whose memory is always giving some kind of merits. So he was really a Punya Smarana. And now the students can learn something very importantly, very important points. And also there is a one, what is called, there is a one Pratiman. In Sanskrit it is called Pratiman or Adarsh. So there is a one icon in front of us who always guides us how to do philosophy, and without being caught in any area. He wrote his autobiography between 2 words, and today's program we organized giving that title, Between 2 Worlds, remembering Professor Jain Mohanty. And actually he was one great scholar who was a master in Western philosophy and also in Indian philosophy. and he could think without being caught in any dogmas which are present in both philosophical traditions. And rarely we can find such scholars. And this is one opportunity for the students of Indian philosophy as well as of Western philosophy to learn something, and also to inquire, to as there are so many issues Professor Arindam Chakravarti raised, and only on very small notice he agreed, and I am very much thankful to him that he accepted my invitation to be present here in this program, and has delivered a very beautiful, very insightful lecture. Thank you very much, sir. I am also thankful to all other scholars who joined us, namely Professor Pradyut Kumar Mukhopadhyay sir, Professor Godavarish Mishra sir, Professor Taraji, Professor Rakesh Chandra ji, and also the scholars whom we cannot invite to speak for paucity of time and hope, because this program was to listen to those scholars who have direct access to Professor Jain Mohanty. And I also invited Professor Jain Mohanty's daughter, but unfortunately she could not join. Today is his Shraddha, and she told me that she will try to join, but she could not join. And so many scholars joined. I thank all of them, and we are planning to organize one international seminar on Carlos Potter, and also one international seminar on Professor Jain Mohanty. And hopefully in coming year we will be organizing one seminar on both of these scholars. I think Professor Arindam Chakravarti is willing to say something. Please, sir.
Sorry to.
You are not audible, sir.
Unmute.
Unmute करें. Unmute तो है शायद. He is
Unmute. It is unmute. There's something on your end. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We are.
Yes, you are audible.
Ramesh ji says yes, but Sachidananda ji, can you hear me? I
am able to hear you. Yeah. Yes.
I want my teacher Pradyut Babu to listen to this. Sir, can you hear me? Is Pradyut Babu there? In any case.
He is there, but he is listening.
Okay.
He's with you.
In a very emotional moment, Mohanty told me an incident on the life of Trilanga Swami that I did not know about. I lived much longer in Varanasi than Professor Mohanty, not longer than Professor Mukhopadhyay, but much longer than Mohanty did. I thought I knew about these saints' lives, and Trilanga Swami's life is very well known. But Professor Mohanty told me something which is very relevant to the custom of doing 2 minutes or 5 minutes of mauna that the Westerns do for a deceased person. I don't think we need to do maunam, but I want to tell this story about Trilanga Swami that Mohanty told me, and after telling me, he just looked at me and he said, this is why Kant and K.C. Bhattacharya were right. It is the moral consciousness which is central to the philosopher, neither spiritual nor the logical. And the story is just haunting. I am absolutely certain if you hear that story, you will think differently about silence. Maunam chaivasmi gujyanam. Why? The story is this. According to British records, Trilanga Swami lived for at least 220 years. for that, of that 100 years he did not speak. Then one day, towards the end of his life, he broke his silence. And the first questions that the devotees asked him was, "Sir," or, "Mahan, Mahodaya, why did you?" And the Kashi Varanasi Pandits asked him, "Why did you keep Mauna Vratam, silence, for 100 years?" And Trailanga Swami answered, "Anrita Bhayat," for fear of telling a lie. I wanted to say that.
Great.
Thank you. So I think we should keep 2 minutes mauna and thereafter end this program.
শেষ করে দিচ্ছি। Professor Mishra, I'm Krishna Rai. I can I take 1 minute to speak something? So I thank you for inviting me and for this beautiful. I could hear these very.
কৃষ্ণাদি আপনি আনমিউট করুন, কিছু শোনা যাচ্ছে না। কৃষ্ণাদি প্লিজ আনমিউট yourself.
Oh, sorry. He could try to help all the students in different ways. So this is one great quality is towards the students. He would try to help in any possible way. But I have another thing to say. I wanted to take this opportunity of requesting Arindam to write a detailed paper on Professor Mohanty. He has delivered such an excellent speech today, and we would like to have those in written forms. So I take this opportunity, and I also thank ICPR for organizing such a memorial service, and I also thank Dr. Mishra for inviting me to join this. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lakshmikanta. Thank you. Sorry to take a few words.